Okay, stages of change. This is a process that anybody goes through when they make a decision to change a behavior that they've identified as having become a problem for them. This stages of change model is particularly effective in substance abuse treatment because it helps clients establish a solid foundation for recovery and helps them identify some of the common pitfalls that happen that can lead to relapse. Now, it's just as important for family members to be familiar with this information so that they can see where their loved one is in their own process and respond accordingly. So to teach this, I'm going to start off by sharing a story with you. This is a fairy tale that I've been working with for over 25 years, and I use it to teach about the addiction recovery process. Now, I'm not going to give it the full treatment. That usually takes 30 or 40 minutes to tell the whole story. But for our purposes here today, just focusing on the stages of change, I'm going to give just an abbreviated, real thumbnail sketch of this story, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look to see how it relates and illustrates this process of going through the stages of change. Okay? So the story goes something like this. Once upon a time, there was a king, and the king had 3 daughters. And he tells his daughters, don't eat any of the apples off the royal apple tree. If you do, you'll disappear under the ground. And then he goes away for a couple days, and as soon as he leaves, the daughters go to the apple tree and they start eating the apples, and they disappear under the ground. King comes back a couple days later, and when he walks into the castle, he doesn't see them anyplace. So he goes upstairs, nope, they're not up there. He goes downstairs, nope, they're not down there. Looks out in the backyard, nope, they're not there. He's starting to get a little worried. He has his servants go look around the grounds of the castle. They come back, no, we can't find him anyplace. He's getting more worried, and eventually he realizes, we got a problem on our hands. The princesses are missing. So he sends a notice out to the kingdom that there's a big reward for whoever can find the princesses and return them safely. So all the people of the kingdom begin to search for the princesses. Now, there were 3 brothers. They come up with a plan. They figure, I bet the princess has wandered off into the woods next to the castle, and we have a cabin out there. We'll go stay in the cabin, and we'll search out in the woods, and I bet we'll find them. So they head out in the woods, and it turns out that the youngest brother is the smartest of the 3 brothers, and he figures out that the princesses are exactly 100 feet underneath that cabin, and he can get down to them through this well out behind the cabin. So the youngest brother goes down to the bottom of the well, and when he gets there, he discovers that the princesses are being held captive by dragons. And he realizes that if he's going to get these princesses out of the well, he's going to have to slay these dragons. So he begins to battle the dragons, and eventually he slays all of them, and he gets the princesses out of the well. But then something happens, and he ends up being stuck down there, and he ends up staying down at the bottom of the well for a really long time. But eventually he does get out of the well, and he goes back to the castle, and when he gets there, he sees there's this wedding festival going on. And he walks into the middle of it, and he sees his brothers are there, and they have betrayed him. They told the king that they were the ones that went to the bottom of the well and slayed the dragons, and they're getting the reward of marrying the princesses. But the youngest brother walks up to the king, and he happens to have brought some proof with him from the bottom of the well that showed that he was actually the one who slayed the dragons. And he convinces the king that he's the one who should get the reward, and he gets his choice of one of the daughter's hands in marriage. Naturally, he chooses the youngest daughter, and he's married. And they have a wonderful wedding festival, and many years later, when the king eventually passed on, the youngest brother became king, and together with his bride, the queen, they ruled over the kingdom. Everybody was satisfied, and they all lived happily ever after. Okay, so let's see how this lines up with the stages of change. At the very beginning of the story, the moment the princesses disappear, we've got a problem on our hands, right? But the thing is, the king is gone when this happens, and so he's not aware that the problem exists. The first stage of the stages of change is we call pre-contemplation. This would be the denial stage. A problem exists, but we're not aware that the problem exists. But when the king comes back, he starts looking around the castle for them. The second stage of the stages of change we call contemplation. we begin to look at the issue to make a determination if we believe this is a problem or not. And so as the king's going from room to room, and each time he goes into a room and they're not there, he gets a little bit more concerned. And eventually he hits a tipping point where he arrives at the conclusion, yes, indeed, I believe we have a problem here. So that's the contemplation stage. We're looking at the issue. We're weighing the pros and cons, the benefits of the risks. And if indeed we land on the side that we think this is a problem, the third stage of the stages of change is called the preparation stage. We make a plan for addressing the problem. So in our story, that's the people beginning to search for the princesses, and in particular, the brothers make a plan. We're going to go out to the woods. We think that's where the princesses are, and we're going to search for them out there. And then the fourth stage is called the action stage. This is where we implement new behaviors for addressing the problem. And so in this case, the youngest brother goes down to the bottom of the well and he slays dragons. And he's doing the work required to address the problem. Now, notable and the neat thing about this story is the fact he gets stuck down there. He didn't choose to stay down there, but he gets stuck and he ends up having to stay a lot longer than he thought that he would have to. This is indicative of, in the action stage, it said that it should last 3 to 6 months, which is pointing out the fact that these new behaviors that we're beginning to practice, we need to do this long enough for those new behaviors to become routine. It's not just a novelty for a couple of weeks trying something new. It's got to become a lifestyle. And you can see how that would really tie into substance abuse. Recovery has to become a lifestyle. And usually it takes a lot longer than most people want to give it credit for as far as just practicing this over and over. But eventually he gets out of the well, but when he gets up there, he's betrayed by his brothers. And that, you could say, represents we're going to be challenged on the work that we've done at the bottom of the well. Those are what we might call relapse triggers or stressors. There's going to be things that happen in life that cause us to have to demonstrate that we're able to prove that we've done our work. And eventually, by that becoming a routine and being able to do that consistently, we move into the maintenance stage, the last stage of the stages of change, which represents consistent, symptom-free behavior. There's no signs of the initial problem. So the goal for anybody who's beginning the process of attempting to recover from an addiction is to get to this maintenance stage. We need to get to the point of consistent symptom-free behavior. So to recap, again, the reason the stages of change model is so effective is it helps us monitor our progress as we go through the process of establishing recovery. And in particular, it can point out some of the most common pitfalls that lead to relapse. And that usually occurs by skipping through the stages too quickly.